Cadel Evans needs no introduction. 2009 World Champ, Commonwealth Games gold medalist, and he's still the only Australian ever to win the Tour de France. On the latest episode of TriVelo's Get Fast podcast, head coach Gerard shares his amazing story of the time he was able to sneakily track down and train with Cadel as he was deep into preparation for his goal of a Tour de France victory. Not only that, Coach Gerard goes on to explain how this fateful day transformed TriVelo's training and coaching philosophy forever. So, the following 10 minutes will reveal some of the most valuable peak performance lessons Gerard learned from Cadel, and also why Cadel Evans is just an all-round fantastic human being.
As everybody knows, Cadel used to come home in our summer, in the European winter, and he had a house in Bowen Heads. And as a family, with a couple of other families that you've grown up with, we always holidayed together, the three families, in one house in Bowen Heads. And we spent a lot of time, and we went to other places as well, but we spent the majority of your time at this house in Bowen Heads. And there was always a group on the Saturday morning. There was always a group every morning. And Cadel would occasionally ride with the local group, which was really good of him, because this is 2005, 6, 7, 8. You know, he was starting to become, and 2011 he won the Tour de France. So
he podiumed in 2007.
Yeah, and he was, you know, on the Giro, he was, you know, successful, and he won Flesh Alone, and, you know, didn't really need to be riding with, you know, a pack of old guys in Lycra. But he did, and he gave his time, and it was really impressive, actually. And we do a thing called country turns, where you would ride side by side, two abreast, and everybody would move up one. And Cadel would get to talk to you for, you know, a minute, and then the person at the front would move over to the left, and the next person would move up, and then Cadel would move up to the next person. So the groups became huge because they knew that possibly Cadel was going to ride, and it was a really good community thing that he was doing, and he was encouraging people to ride their bikes and asking them, how's your training going? He's a fantastic person. And he comes across, you know, a little bit out there, and that's what you have to be a champion. I think you have to have some sort of difference between the commoners, as I would say. But he was really good with his time. And one day I managed to ask him, because he would always go from that ride onto his then proper ride. It was like his warm-up. Mm-hmm. And then he would go out from that point where at the back of wherever Paraparap or the Bells Beach circuit. Anyway, I was so keen to go for a ride with him, just me and him, and I just he took off and everybody turned, and that was the protocol. And I kind of stayed back a bit and came up behind him after about 5 minutes. I think I scared the living daylights out of him because he hadn't started training, but I rode flat out to catch back up to him and said, "Oh, do you mind if I just ride behind you?" And I think he was not happy at all, because that was his rule, that no one was to ride with him. But he goes, "Oh, yeah, okay, whatever." Anyway, so he started doing what I didn't know what he was doing. He started doing his efforts that his coach from Italy had been sending him online, and anyway, he started doing the first effort. Then he sort of pulls up, and I think we'd ridden about 5 minutes, and I was doing everything in my power to hold his wheel. I was trying to hide from the wind. I certainly had understood what side of the wheel to ride on in a crosswind. And I could see him sort of looking under his arm to see if I was still there. And of course, at the end of it, he sort of puts his hand up saying, "Oh, that's it for the first effort." And so I was like breathing flat out saying, what are you doing? What's next? And he'd say, "Oh, I'm going to do 5 of these." And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to keep up. But I said, "What pace, you know, what speed are you riding at?" He said, "Speed? No, I'm riding to power." And, you know, after the next 5 minutes, we're ready to start the next one, because it was 1 minute rest. And then away we go again. And the next 1 minute, I'd ask him a few more questions. "What do you mean? What's power? What are you talking about? You powering your legs or?" And then the next 1 minute was, no, it's a power meter. And I'm just blown away. I have no idea what he's talking about. And anyway, we finished those efforts, and then we were heading to Point Addis, which, for those who know the west coast of Victoria, it's got Bells Beach and you know, all the famous surf resorts. Anyway, some of the roads down to the beach have got some hills. So he said, "I'm going to do some 1 minute hill repeats at the Point Addis circuit. You can come there and we'll just cruise along and we'll talk till then." So I had the opportunity to ask him all about the power meter, and he explained it all to me. And my mind was blown. I just thought, I need to get a power meter and start training with power, and rather than just perceived exertion. That's what I'd done for literally 20 years. And at that stage, I had a computer that told me the average speed and the distance. And I think I had a polar heart rate meter. Can't remember exactly when I got that, but anyway, we did these 1 minute hill repeats, and I said to him, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to keep up with you on these." He says, "I'm just going to go up and back. Why don't you turn halfway and I'll go to the bottom, and then I'll see if I can catch you." So we did that, and I can't remember how many we did, but in my mind at the time, I was thinking, "Oh, far out, Cadel Evans is chasing me up this hill." It was like a race situation. It was like my childhood dream. I'm on my bike, and he probably wouldn't even remember any of this. But it was everything to me. It was, can I stay away from Cadel and get to the top? And, the first couple I was pretty gung-ho, and then as I got tighter and tighter, he was passing me halfway up the hill, and but he was laughing a bit. But anyway, and then he said, "Great stuff. You've done a really good job. And now we're going to go and do some, I think it was more tempo work around." And at this stage, I'd already done 120K. It was 35 degrees. I think I had one drink bottle with me. And I'd ridden as hard as I'd ridden in the last, I think, decade. And I said, how much longer? And he goes, "Oh, it's probably another hour and a half before we get to Barwon Heads." And I said, "No." Even I knew then that was enough. As much as I wanted to keep riding with him, I had to crawl. I basically crawled home at 10 Ks an hour, I reckon, stopped at Torquay and sat under a tree with a can of Coke. And then I got back to Barwon Heads. And when I got back, the guys at the house were asking, did you ride with Cadel? You planned it at work? I said, "Yeah, you would. It's the best day I've ever had." But the reason we're telling it is because it changed my whole thinking about training and how organised he was and specific he was with what he was doing. And we used to go in the afternoon to the beach with you kids, and I remember sitting on the beach looking at the Barwon Bridge, and I saw Cadel behind the motorbike in the afternoon, doing motor pacing in the afternoon. So he did that 150K ride in the morning, and here he was doing motor pacing in the afternoon. He did tell me he had strength gym work to do at lunchtime. I didn't know about the motor pacing, but I saw him in the afternoon, and I thought, that's what it takes to be the best.
Well, he was top 3, top 5 GC rider at that point. So
yeah, and it was such an eye opener to me of the professionalism that he had. He was, I think I was quite knowledgeable as an athlete and as a coach, but this was next level to me, and it really was a turning point that if you want to be successful, and it doesn't have to be all the time about winning, but if you want to be better, you have to do things better. You have to be organised. You have to manage it better. You have to act like a professional. Even if you're a masters rider, if you want to be better, you have to do things better. And if you're going to spend an hour and a half, do it properly. Don't do it like make it up as you go. Have structure, have a plan. And from that point on, even though I felt like I was very organised, he exposed that I wasn't. I thought I was, but it was next level. And I think that really helped me in my adult life, post-professional, to be a much better coach, I reckon. And I was a much better athlete because my time-efficient training went through the roof. I didn't have the time, but now I was training so much smarter.
It's such a you story to just decide that you told the guys, "I've got a plan here. I'm going to ride with Cadel tomorrow," and you sat at the back and you peeled off and you had the guts to go, "No, I want to find out what he's doing." And it's just typical of your personality, same as in the 80s. I'm going to go find out what the best people are doing, and here's your chance to do it. And it was one of the most beneficial decisions you've made.
Yeah, it was a bit of a risk because he could have told me to rack off. But that's the sort of personality he was. I think he thought, "Oh, this guy's that keen, what harm's it doing?" I think he felt sorry for me. But when he realised that I could actually hold his wheel, and I didn't add the very first 5-minute effort, I moved to the left a little bit, and I was looking down, and we were doing 45 Ks an hour or something like that. And I thought, "Oh, mustn't be that hard. It must be a tailwind." And I moved, and I nearly lost 5 bike lengths because I put my nose in the wind for a second. It's like, "Oh, shit, how hard is this?" And back in behind his wheel. And as we know, there's a 30% effect of drafting. And that was an eye-opener to me because whether you're riding into the wind or against the wind, with the wind, he could ride the power meter both ways because the course we were on, it turned left and right. And so we had crosswinds and we had tailwind and we had a headwind. And he was holding the same power, yet the speeds were different. You know, 1 minute we're doing 55 with the tailwind, and the crosswind we're doing 45, and in the headwind we're doing 40. You know, so, and he said, I've done all 5 efforts the same. I said, no, we haven't. We've done them this speed, that speed. He goes, speed's nothing. Speed's good at the end when you've got an average, but the power is everything. I actually met Cadel about 10 years later on a charity ride, and my job was to get the corporate riders to spend a minute beside him, almost like we had the country turns, and I was to ride behind him to protect him from being cross-wheeled or from getting crashed. And so I didn't get a chance to say to him, you will not remember me, but I did this on this particular day, and it was a bit of a game changer. And his typical modest fashion, he goes, oh, that's great. You know? But there's no recollection of it. But
to listen to the rest of this episode, just search Get Fast Podcast in any of your podcast apps, or click the link in the description below to watch the full episode on YouTube.